Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, before I was a tech writer and podcast guy, I was the IT guy. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think it was a company called CWJobs that helped me secure my role at the NEC in Birmingham way back in 2006. And the only reason I mention this is because CWJobs recently launched a campaign called Turning to Tech, and a report that revealed that over 55% of non-tech workers are contemplating a career change and have considered or begun the process of moving into tech or an IT-based role since the pandemic. Now, that news followed the CBI announcement that £13 billion will be needed to retrain adults by 2030 to support the future economy. So I invited Dominic Harvey, director at CWJobs, onto the podcast today to discuss exactly what it is that's making people consider a career change in IT, and also share other insights from their report along with trends and how you too could secure a role in tech or improve your tech skills to be more valuable in that market. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Dominic Harvey in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Certainly. My name's Dominic Harvey. I'm the sales director for CWJobs, which is a tech specialist supplying tech talent to UK companies since 1999. We've been doing that, and it's certainly been a year like no other, but we have long experience of doing that within the UK.
Well, for our international listeners, for the last 20 years, CWJobs has been the home for tech jobs here in the UK. As an ex-IT guy, I'm more than familiar with what you do. But for those international listeners, could you possibly set the scene and share a little bit more about the kind of people that you serve out there?
Yeah, we came out of it. I mean, it's a curious name, isn't it? There's no doubt about it, CWJobs. We came out of Computer Weekly, and we evolved out of in the late 90s, the massive back end of the magazine, which would list all the contracts and all the current permanent requirements that were listed. And of course, they were transferring to the online basis, and that became CWJobs. So CWJobs.co.uk has always been, since that whole buzz around the Millennium Bug and things like that, the hub for people to find their jobs, people to advertise their jobs, recruitment consultants to advertise direct clients' jobs as well. So it's got that rich heritage, a CV database of over 1.2 million and lots of subscribers that want to know what's happening in the market and get jobs emailed to them, jobs by email, etc., which is fairly old technology, but very, very effective. And obviously we overlay that with new ways of reaching out to candidates and artificial intelligence, that kind of thing, to try and enable clients to find the correct candidates for their projects.
Love that. And you guys have been on an incredible journey there over the last 20 years. But the main reason I invited you on the podcast today was after recently reading a report by CWJobs that revealed that over half, in fact 55% of non-tech workers are contemplating a career change. And they've either considered that or even begun the process of moving into a tech-based role as well, with almost 1 in 10 already have made the move. So can you tell me more about that report and who you surveyed? And did it have anything to do with the government's Fatima wanting to join cyber? Did that have anything to do with it?
We surveyed 2,000 UK professionals.
Yeah.
Some of them were tech workers, some were non-tech workers. And I think it's more to do with tech just gathering this immense pace within the working environment. It permeates, it must be every single department of business now. And I don't think there would be a project that is released without some kind of technical input. Even when you look at facilities management, it would be fast tracking or streamlining or looking at the return on investment on facilities projects and things like that. So I don't think there's a corner of business at the moment now and ongoing, which isn't touched by tech. So I think if you are currently in business, you can't help but see how it's permeated all areas, and that this is the right the right train to be on for the future. And I think particularly with the coronavirus hitting this year, people have been very aware of where is my job security going to be, because I don't want to be losing my job or put in the position either having lost my job and having to retrain, or knowing friends that have been through that. How do I kind of future-proof my career? And standing out very clearly is the tech option.
Yeah, that whole space has evolved dramatically over the years, from, I don't know, the IT guy delivering a computer and mouse and monitor to the new starter, to behind the frustration of saying no to that lengthy IT project. But yeah, I think here in 2020, I think that every business recognises the increased value of IT and technology support now, and they're seen as enablers rather than blockers that they were in the past. So that turning to tech report found that almost, I think it was 45% of IT workers said their company is actively recruiting for additional tech-based roles. I mean, did that surprise you, considering the current climate?
It did when we found that out, because that confidence index we run, and we run it, and this is the second year we're running it, and that confidence index was run probably in the absolute depths of just post-lockdown. So March and April. So that even in tech, there was real paralysis as to what on earth are we going to do in this period, as companies were ramping up the remote working potential and things like that. So to see that come out of such a dire period was quite a surprise. But I think when you look at it, and when we see that it has been an enabler to so many businesses, and was previously, but it's certainly been accentuated in this crisis. When you look at it in that aspect, it's not entirely surprising, because the importance of infrastructure, people recognizing that if they haven't got a strong remote working plan, then they may be exposed on a cybersecurity aspect. So having to throw a lot of time and money and effort into making sure they're protected in that area. When you start looking at it in that aspect, it's not surprising. And I think the IT managers, IT directors are looking forward to having, quite a strong hand in the budgets they're discussing, probably now or probably already signed off for next year.
And what I also thought was refreshing was, rather than retreating into, protectionism, an incredible 81% of IT workers said that they would welcome talent from outside of the tech industry, with almost 3 in 10 supporting this, as it would help close the skills gap too. So do you think it really does represent a genuine opportunity for people to pursue that career in tech that they always dreamt of doing, but this has almost given them a push now?
Yeah, I mean, you hinted at it a little bit earlier, actually, about the kind of stereotyped IT person of undoubtedly 20, 25 years ago. And that has definitely changed enormously. I still think there's a long way to go in terms of gender diversity, but that kind of that darkened room at the end of the corridor that you daren't go in kind of thing is a thing of the past. It really, really is. And tech departments are no longer one man in control of everything. But they're huge departments that will involve product, will involve support, will involve just general tech and getting procurement of laptops and things like that. But that has changed hugely. So I must admit, though, I was surprised that 8 in 10 saw it as a really, really real positive, and that the 30% were looking at it as a real way of being able to close the skills gap. There is that understanding, I think, that there is a current requirement, and we're going to have to open up, turn on all the taps to potentially get the right talent into the tech department to be able to assist the rest of the business, because they're obviously feeling that stress of endless demands from the business. Great, I liked what you did with that project. Can I now have 3 projects of that order for these departments, please? So they're probably welcoming the thought of people being able to help them out.
And I'm curious, are a lot of these tech roles outside of IT as well? Because like you said, there is a lot of areas in different departments that require those tech skills too, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think data analysis, there's business analysis, looking at demands of the business, whilst not necessarily having to be a dyed-in-the-wall coder from the age of 12 or 13, as it were. There is a huge variety of opportunities, I think, that that the wider general public aren't actually aware of, that they can start to move into. I mean, if you look at, for example, I was thinking about this, and if you look at the world of search engine marketing, and the person on the marketing team, who books the search engine marketing, so your jobs or your products are highlighted within Google. Now, is that person part of the marketing team, or has their job become so entrenched in the whole bidding desk, the whole algorithms of when and what to purchase, that you are now more part of the tech team? Similarly, on e-commerce side, are you part of? Are you from a retail background, or are you actually more from a tech discipline? And I think there's a blurring of those lines across so many disciplines within business now, that tech's almost laying claim to being the father or the parent of many of them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And that's something that I've seen time and time again. And if we go to IT support and cybersecurity, they're the traditional top priorities, especially when it comes to the tech skills that companies are searching for. And the pandemic has obviously sped up the ambition to change careers completely. So what advice would you offer to somebody listening to this podcast anywhere in the world, wanting to enter a career in tech? What should be the first steps that they take?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to step into cybersecurity. Yeah, I think you have to. It's a case of baby steps, having the right early ambitions. You can have the long-term goals, but make it like any project you might do. Make sure that the goals are attainable. I think it's about approaching if you're in work at the moment, it's about approaching your company. Maybe there's unspent levy from the apprenticeship levy. That's the word I'm looking for. So that may be able to be given to you, and you can do maybe an open university course or something like that, or an assisted course. And I think that's something really, really interesting. Of course, there is a complete career break and really, really going for it in terms of university courses and that. But there may be other opportunities within the business that you don't know about. I think it's a case of speaking to your tech department, speaking to your IT manager, and finding out what opportunities there could be. One of the areas that I think that is untapped is the whole apprenticeship side, and bringing in people and training people up in the skills and the technology that the business has. And I think one of the beauties of that is you can actually dictate as far as you're to dictate the diversity of the cohort you bring in to train up for that possibility. So from a business point of view, I think it's very attractive. It's just having that certainty of the order book and knowing that you have work for them to do in the future, and the understanding that you will lose a few on the way.
And I'm glad you brought that subject up. And are you noticing that tech workers almost have that responsibility and have been given that wake-up call that they need to keep their IT skills current and also embrace that opportunity to progress in their career, or maybe even specialise in a particular area?
I think the IT community, by their very nature, are curious and they want to always looking and searching for something a little bit extra. How can I do something faster? How can I do it quicker? How can I do it better? So that's always going to lead them to a natural curiosity to faster, better, more effective technologies. And that, by its very nature, will mean they have to learn how to use those, how to embrace them, what the pros and cons of those are. So I think that is part of the IT mentality, the tech mentality, for want of a better word. But it's an interesting point you raise on the specialism side, because you get to that kind of that point. And I knew somebody who was an Italian, and he specialised in legacy systems. This was in the 90s, legacy mainframe systems for Italian banks. And of course, they were becoming more and more scarce, but he was becoming one of the few that could actually do it. So his rates would increase consequently. But I suppose at the back of his mind, he's always thinking there's going to be a day when there are none of the legacy systems that I specialise in left. So it's a case of tapering that down and making sure you've got one foot on advancing technologies and making sure you're aware of what those technologies are. But like I say, I think the average tech person has that curiosity to look out for advancing technologies and software and ways of working. So I think that is unsurprising that people within the tech department will always be looking out for training and ways for career advancement.
And from the outside looking in, I would expect that contracting is becoming more and more popular now. Now that we don't need to have people sat at their desks at the same time every day, and you can just flex resources for projects as and when needed. And I do know at CWJobs, you pride yourselves in making it easier for people to hunt for their next tech role and incredibly fast, whether that be contracting or a permanent role. So I've got to ask, what excites you about helping your audience with that challenge in 2021? And are there any particular trends that you're following closely?
Yeah, I mean, contracting side is a hot potato at the moment in the UK. Obviously with IR35, and that's a whole podcast on itself, Neil. I'm sure you'll agree on that. But very, very interesting that they pulled IR35 at the last moment. I mean, literally the last moment, to allow contracting in the private sector to continue unhampered for this year. But for me, when we look at the roles we advertise, and being an ex-IT recruitment consultant myself, I know the impact that the IT community and the tech community can make on businesses. And when you see, I think it's 2.9 million tech jobs created in the last 2 years, and now represents 9% of the UK workforce work in tech. And we have undoubtedly been part of that journey. And it makes me very, very proud that we can help and potentially be part of the solution to speed up how quickly companies can get their projects off the ground, get their competitive advantage. But one of the key things, and I would never be arrogant on this, because it is so difficult to find, and there is such a talent gap. It's so difficult to find some of these skills that we are only part of the puzzle. Word of mouth, being the kind of employer that people want to come back to because they had a great time. They just moved on maybe to try some different technology, different software, different ways of working for another company, but be that company they want to come back to in 2 or 3 years. Word of mouth of, inviting friends of friends that can come in. And looking at different and diverse ways to recruit people. And one of those is very much still the tech specialist job board, of which CWJobs prides itself on being.
And I'm curious, are you guys under a lot more pressure now, or the recruitment industry under pressure as well? Because traditionally, I think businesses had time for that recruitment and onboarding process, and the fact that it took 2 to 3 months or possibly even more to get that right person in the right role to bring a project to life. Whereas as now people just want it straight away, don't they? How do you meet a challenge like that?
Well, I think, we're continually striving to use not just supply the technology and the technology experts, but actually use that technology ourselves. And there is things like Candidate Recommender, which looks at the profiles of candidates that are applying to your job. And then we'll look inside our database for profiles that mirror that and potentially offer them up in menu like and say, these look similar to the kind of people that are applying to your jobs. Would you like to invite them to apply? And that's just one way that AI can help out, certainly with our CV database. So it's a way of expanding the potential pool. I think that's one way of doing it. But equally, helping on diversity, for example, we have something called Equality Boost that uses programmatic sensibilities, but overlays national statistical data where the particular gender you're looking for, a particular ethnicity you're looking for, maybe more prevalent, and kind of amplifies the projection of the programmatic advertising in those areas as well. So there are definitely ways that tech can help recruit. But the fundamental nut to crack, I think, is this whole taking the fear out of, for what is a lot of recruiters, is the area within business that they have the most difficulty in recruiting, which is tech. Because to some recruiters, it's quite a confusing area. And if we can demystify that or make it easier to see through the see the wood for the trees, and that this is a great candidate for your role, and I think we're really advancing on that. That's continually the holy grail almost, to make that as simple as possible. So at the moment, it's very much a human to human issue. The project manager, the IT director, having a good look at the candidate, having an interview with that candidate, probably remotely these days, but we can help with that too with Cameo. But that human interaction is still absolutely vital. And I think there's only so much to speed that up as we see things at the moment. But I think that there's definitely advancements in artificial intelligence and looking at kind of profiles that are being recruited and making that easier for clients to seek out and profile.
So many great points in there as well, because like you said, it needs to be human to human. But at the last, 9 months and possibly a few more months, there is going to be people out there, isn't there, that have been recruited online. They've never met in person. The interview was on a Zoom or a Teams video, and then they've started the company working remotely. And I would imagine it's also challenging to make that person feel a part of the company when you've never actually met any of your colleagues. Have you heard any stories on that out of interest?
Well, we've actually had experience ourselves, obviously recruiting to our teams. And yeah, we've certainly got examples of people that have joined and never set foot in the office. This in their entire, what would it be, 8 months tenure at Stepstone UK, who owns CWJobs. They've never stepped inside the office. In fact, they may never have met face-to-face with anybody from their team. It's all been across the likes of Zoom, the likes of Teams, as we've all had to work recently. So that does present challenges on how to roll out your culture to those teams, get them to understand your culture. And indeed, it might be a culture that no longer exists or is changed forever. So there's plenty of questions, I think, with regards to onboarding that are going to come up next year, and how you really embed somebody within your team. I think that, to a certain extent, tech is pretty transactional. You're either doing the job and you're supplying the code or the project results, or you're not. But I think for when so many people talk about friendly working environment being really important to where they want to work, that's more difficult to gauge and imbue when it's done remotely. So yeah, definitely a lot of questions and a lot of issues down the line.
Yeah, it's a huge topic and something I'd love to get you back on next year and explore a little deeper. But before I do let you go today, for anyone listening that would like to find out more information about the work you're doing, download that report or even contact a member of your team, what's the best way of doing that? Yeah,
you can download it from CWJobs.co.uk or you can contact me on LinkedIn, Dominic Harvey, or you could email me directly at dominic.harvey@cwjobs.co.uk, and I'd be happy to respond or point you in the direction of somebody that will be able to help you even further. But yeah, happy to discuss, happy to hear from anybody and discuss it further.
Well, it has been a turbulent year, to say the least, and there's been a lot of doom and gloom on the news. But what I love about our conversation today is that learning about tapping into this new pipeline of future talent that will help alleviate that gap and support and offer training to those willing to learn and upskill and enter a career in tech. And there is something quite beautiful about that. But I'd love to continue this conversation next year. But more than anything, thanks for sharing that with me today.
Absolute pleasure, Neil. Thank you.
The tech industry has long experienced a skills gap. And as the demand for top talent has exceeded supply over the years, it feels like the pandemic has dramatically amplified that, especially as businesses recognise that increased value of IT and tech support. So the fact that nearly 45% of IT workers revealed that their company is actively recruiting for tech-based roles and offering greater opportunities for those looking to retrain and upskill into the thriving tech sector is something that needs to be shouted about. But I'm curious, are you one of those individuals thinking of making that change? Or is your company actively searching for tech talent? or somebody looking to retrain. This is the point where I want to be the connector. So please let me know, and hopefully we can unite a few people, solve a few problems, and make the world a better place. Yeah, I know it's cheesy, but I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. So if a business and an individual is listening to this podcast, they can both help each other out. I'd love to play that role. Equally, if you've got any questions or insights that you want to share, or you want to come on this podcast, again, let me know. My email address is techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Send a message out into the universe and let's see where it leads. If not, I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning where I've got another guest lined up. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.